Help! He's collapsing! The desperate cries shatter the opulent calm of the Celestine Star's deck, where Miami's elite recoil as billionaire Thane Warwick collapses, his breath fading. Amid the panic, Selene Whitaker, radiant in a crimson gown, her long black hair with gently curled tips shimmering under moonlight, moves with unshakable grace. Just moments before, the Warwick family's venomous barbs targeted her Atlanta roots, their prejudice a heavy cloak over her quiet dignity. Yet now her steady hands and piercing hazel eyes command the chaos, poised to unravel their scorn in a single, breathtaking act. Her strength will rewrite their judgment, forging a legacy of fire and truth. This story's raw power captivates 810. Subscribe and tap the bell for more tales of triumph and share where you're watching from. Miami, London, or beyond, and the time on your clock. The Miami night hummed with a restless pulse, the air thick with sea salt and the promise of secrets. It was June 15th, 2025, and the Celestine Star, a gleaming yacht moored at Miami's sparkling marina, stood as a floating palace under a star-strewn sky. Fairy lights draped its sleek lines, their golden glow dancing on the water like scattered coins. The scent of jasmine curled through the warm breeze, mingling with the faint clink of champagne flutes and the soft wail of a jazz quartet. This was no mere boat. It was a cathedral of wealth, its marble decks and crystal chandeliers, a testament to the elite who gathered for Dr. Zara Kincaid's charity gala, a night meant to weave connections among Miami's power players. Selene Whitaker stepped from the sleek black sedan, her crimson gown catching the moonlight like a flame against the night. Her long black hair, straight as a river with softly curled tips, cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face radiant with quiet strength. At 28, her hazel eyes gleamed with a sharpness honed by years of defying doubt, her dark skin a canvas of resilience. Born in Atlanta's Vine City, where her mother's late shifts as a librarian and her father's calloused hands as a mechanic built her dreams, Selene had clawed her way to Harvard Medical School's top honors. Yet tonight, she was not here as a doctor. Zara, her mentor and friend, had invited her to network, not to reveal her title. Selene's smile was a shield, warm but guarded as she smoothed her gown, its silk hugging her graceful frame. She felt the weight of eyes, not all kind, as she crossed the gangway. The yacht's main deck was a vision of opulence. Crystal flutes gleamed on trays carried by servers in crisp white uniforms. Women in gowns that whispered of Milan runways mingled with men in tailored tuxedos, their laughter a polished performance. The jazz quartet's melody wove through the air, a delicate counterpoint to the murmur of wealth. Selene's heels clicked softly on the marble, her presence drawing glances, some curious, others appraising, a few edged with something colder. She was no stranger to such looks. Her skin, her poise, her very existence in this gilded world seemed to pose a question to some, a challenge to others. Yet she stood tall, her hair catching the fairy lights, her gown a defiant splash of color amid the muted elegance. Zara Kincaid, radiant in sapphire blue, her short curls crowned with a diamond pin, spotted Selene and swept forward. "You're here," she said, her voice warm, pulling Selene into a quick embrace. "You're going to dazzle them, Selene. These people need to know you." Zara, a renowned philanthropist and Selene's mentor from residency, had insisted she attend, promising a night to forge connections. Selene's lips curved, her hazel eyes softening. "I'm just here to listen and learn, Zara," she said, her tone gentle but firm, her humility a quiet armor. She didn't mention her degree, her valedictorian status, or the lives she'd already saved. Tonight she was Zara's friend, not a doctor, at least not yet. Zara led her toward the heart of the deck, where a towering figure held court near a glass railing. Thane Warwick, a 60-year-old tech billionaire, stood in a charcoal suit, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. His wife, Isadora, her emerald necklace a quiet boast, clung to his arm, her blonde chignon flawless. Their son, Gideon, lean and sharp in a black tuxedo, sipped scotch, his green eyes scanning the crowd. Their smiles were practiced, but as Zara introduced Selene, their gazes shifted, lingering on her dark skin, her crimson gown, her hair with its elegant curls at the ends. "This is Selene Whitaker," Zara said, her voice bright. A dear friend and someone you'll want to know. Isadora's lips parted in a smile that didn't reach her pale blue eyes. Miss Whitaker, she said, her voice smooth as polished stone. How unexpected to see you here. You work in, what was it, healthcare? The pause before healthcare was a blade, subtle but sharp, implying Celine's presence was a curiosity, a token. Celine's smile remained serene, her hazel eyes unwavering. Yes, I'm in healthcare, she said, her tone warm, deliberately vague. She wouldn't boast. Not here, not now. Her parents had taught her to let her work speak, not her words. Gideon leaned forward, his smirk a flicker of disdain. Healthcare, huh? Bet it's nice to get a front row seat to all this, thanks to Zara. His words landed like a jab, suggesting Celine was here on charity, not merit. The crowd nearby stirred, a few heads turning, their whispers a soft tide. Celine's fingers brushed her gown, her heart quickening, but her face stayed calm, her goodness a quiet fire. I'm grateful for Zara's friendship, she said, her voice steady, and for the chance to meet people who share her vision. Her words were a deflection, graceful but pointed, cutting through his barb with precision. Thane tilted his head, his Scotch glass catching the light. Where are you from, Miss Whitaker? He asked, his tone deceptively light, as if her answer might explain her audacity to stand among them. Atlanta, Celine replied, her chin lifting slightly, her hair shimmering. Vine City. My parents raised me to earn my place. Her pride was a beacon, unshaken, but Thane's smile tightened, his eyes flicking over her as if measuring her worth against his empire. Isadora's laugh was a delicate chime. Vine City? That's quite a journey to end up here. The word here was heavy, a reminder of the invisible line Celine had crossed. Zara's eyes flashed, her hand touching Celine's arm. Celine's journey is remarkable, she said, her voice firm. But the Warwick's gazes remained cold, their smiles a mask. The jazz quartet's notes swelled, the fairy lights casting fractured light across the deck, but the air grew heavier. Celine felt the familiar ache of being scrutinized, her skin a puzzle to these strangers. Yet she stood, her gown glowing, her hair a dark cascade, her resolve a steel core. She wasn't here to prove herself, not yet, but to connect, to listen, to hold her ground. The Miami skyline shimmered beyond the railing, its neon spires a silent promise of possibility. But the night was young, and the storm of judgment was only beginning to brew. The Celestine Star pulsed with the glamour of Miami's elite, its main deck a glittering stage under a canopy of stars. The jazz quartet's melody curled through the warm June air, a velvet thread weaving past the clink of crystal flutes and the murmur of wealth. Fairy lights twinkled along the railings, casting a golden glow across the marble floor, where Celine Whitaker stood, a vision in her crimson gown. Her long black hair, straight as a midnight stream, with softly curled tips, caught the light like a halo, framing her radiant face. Her hazel eyes, sharp with quiet intelligence, scanned the crowd, her poise unshaken despite the weight of appraising stares. At 28, Celine was a beacon of grace, her dark skin a proud canvas, her Atlanta roots, forged by her librarian mother and mechanic father, a fire no scorn could dim. She stood beside Zara Kincaid, her mentor, whose sapphire dress shimmered as she laughed with a tech mogul. The deck buzzed with Miami's power players, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that whispered of Paris ateliers. But Celine felt the air shift, a subtle chill beneath the festive sheen. The Warwick family, introduced moments ago, lingered nearby, their polished smiles masking a sharper edge. Thane Warwick, the billionaire patriarch, sipped his scotch, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. His wife, Isadora, her emerald necklace glinting like a cold star, tilted her head, her pale blue eyes fixing on Celine with a curiosity that felt more like dissection. Gideon, their son, leaned against the railing, his green eyes sharp, his smirk a blade waiting to cut. Isadora stepped closer, her blonde chignon flawless, her voice smooth as silk, but laced with venom. Miss Whitaker, she said, the words dripping with condescension. Healthcare, was it? I'd imagine you're something like a nurse or an assistant, yes? How charming to see you here. The assumption landed like a slap, implying Celine's presence was a fluke, her role too minor for this gilded world. Celine's fingers brushed the silk of her gown, her heart quickening, but her smile remained serene, a shield of grace. I work in healthcare, yes, she replied, her tone warm, deliberately vague. Her parents had taught her to let her deeds speak, not her titles, and she wouldn't boast. Not yet. Gideon's smirk widened, his scotch glass tilting as he leaned forward. Must be quite a leap getting invited to a place like this, he said, his voice sugary but sharp. Zara's got a knack for finding interesting guests. The word interesting was a barb, suggesting Celine was a token, a diversity checkbox riding Zara's coattails. The crowd nearby stirred, a few heads turning, their whispers a rising tide. Celine's hazel eyes met Gideon's, unflinching, her goodness a quiet fire. Zara's friendship means the world, she said, her voice steady, and I'm here to connect with people who value impact over image. Her words were a deft parry, cutting through his insinuation with precision, but the sting of his disdain lingered. Thane set his glass down, the clink sharp against the quartet's melody. Atlanta, you said? Vine City? His tone was deceptively light, but in form as de Costos. That's a long way from all this, isn't it? The question was a blade, slicing at her roots, implying her working-class origins were a stain unfit for their polished circle. Celine's chest tightened, memories of her mother's late nights and her father's calloused hands flooding her mind. I'm proud of where I'm from, she said, her voice low, resonant, her hair catching the fairy lights like a dark crown. Vine City taught me to earn my place, and I have. Her pride was a beacon, unshaken, but the weight of their scrutiny pressed against her. Isadora's laugh was a delicate chime, her emerald necklace glinting as she sipped her champagne. Earned your place? How inspiring, she said, the word flat, not a compliment. But surely it's a challenge, fitting into a world like ours. Not everyone can keep up. Her pale eyes flicked over Celine's gown, her hair, her presence, as if measuring her worth and finding it wanting. The crowd's murmurs grew, a soft hum of curiosity and judgment. Zara's hand tightened on Celine's arm, her eyes flashing. Celine's more than capable, she said, her voice sharp, but Thane waved a hand dismissing her. It's a generous invitation, Zara, he said, his smile cold. But some connections require alignment. The word was a dagger, suggesting Celine's very existence was a mismatch. Celine's fingers curled slightly, her heart pounding, but her face remained a mask of calm. She thought of her parents, their sacrifices, her mother's weary smiles, her father's steady hands, and her resolve hardened. I fit where I'm valued, she said, her voice soft but edged with steel, meeting Isadora's gaze. My world is built on purpose, not pretense. Her words were a vow, a quiet thunder that silenced the nearby whispers for a moment. Gideon's smirk faltered, but Isadora's smile tightened, unyielding. The jazz quartet played on, the fairy lights casting fractured light across the deck, but the air was thick with tension. Celine stood tall, her crimson gown glowing, her long hair a banner of defiance, her hazel eyes burning with unspoken strength. This was only the beginning, and she was ready, her light undimmed in the face of their scorn. The Celestine Star's upper deck glowed with the sheen of privilege, its mahogany tables draped in crisp white linen, gold-rimmed plates catching the flicker of candlelight. The jazz quartet's melody drifted like a fragile veil over the clink of silverware, the air heavy with the scent of roasted lobster and rosemary. Celine Whitaker sat at the Warwick family's table, her crimson gown a vibrant flame against the muted elegance of Miami's elite. Her long black hair, straight as a midnight river with softly curled tips, cascaded over her shoulders, shimmering under the chandelier's golden glow. At 28, her hazel eyes burned with quiet resolve, her dark skin a proud testament to her Atlanta roots. Yet the weight of scrutiny pressed against her chest, each glance from the Warwicks, Thane, Isadora, and Gideon, a silent challenge to her right to be here. The dinner was a theater of wealth, the guests' laughter polished, their gowns and tuxedos a parade of status. Celine's presence, radiant and poised, drew eyes, some curious, others sharp with judgment. She felt the familiar ache of being a puzzle in a world that preferred neat answers. Zara Kincaid, seated beside her, her sapphire dress catching the light, leaned close, her voice a warm anchor. "You're holding your own, Celine," she whispered, her short curls glinting with a diamond pin. Celine's lips curved, her goodness a quiet shield. "Just trying to keep up with the lobster," she quipped, her tone light but her fingers tightening around her napkin. She hadn't revealed her identity as a doctor, honoring Zara's wish to introduce her as a friend, not a title. But the Warwick's earlier barbs still stung, their assumption that she was a mere healthcare worker, a blade beneath their polished smiles. Isadora Warwick, her emerald necklace glinting like a cold star, tilted her wineglass, her blonde chignon flawless. "Miss Whitaker," she said, her voice smooth but edged with patronizing lilt. "It's truly remarkable, isn't it, to see someone from, where was it, Vine City? Here among us." The words were a dagger cloaked in flattery, implying Celine's presence was a novelty, her Atlanta roots a barrier to this gilded world. The table's guests stirred, their murmurs a soft hum, some leaning in, intrigued by the tension. Celine's heart quickened, memories of her mother's late shifts and her father's calloused hands grounding her. "Vine City's my foundation," she replied, her voice calm, resonant, her hazel eyes meeting Isadora's. "It taught me to value hard work and purpose." Her pride was a beacon, unshaken, but the sting of Isadora's words cut deep. Gideon, his black tuxedo sharp, twirled a fork, his green eyes glinting with a smirk. "Purpose is sweet," he said, his tone sugary but sharp as a blade. "But let's be real. You're here because Zara's got a soft spot for unique additions. Not exactly the usual crowd, right?" The word unique was a barb, suggesting Celine was a token, her presence a gesture rather than a rite. The crowd's whispers grew, a few guests exchanging glances, their curiosity tinged with complicity. Celine's fingers pressed into the linen, her pulse a drumbeat, but her face remained serene, her goodness a quiet fire. "I'm here because Zara values connection," she said, her voice steady, cutting through his insinuation. "And I bring my own worth to any table." Her words were a scalpel, precise and unflinching. Thane set his glass down, the clink sharp against the quartet's melody. "Connection's one thing," he said, his silver hair catching the chandelier's light, his tone deceptively casual. "But this world, our world, requires a certain pedigree. Vine City's a far cry from that, wouldn't you say?" His smile was a mask, his words slicing at her roots, dismissing her parents' sacrifices as unworthy. The table seemed to shrink, the candlelight flickering like a warning. Celine's chest tightened, the ache of her parents' love, her mother's weary smiles, her father's steady hands, burning in her memory. "Pedigree doesn't define value," she said, her voice low, edged with steel, her hair shimmering like a dark crown. "I've earned my place through work, not birthright." Her resolve was a thunderclap, quiet but unyielding. Isadora's laugh was a delicate chime, her pale blue eyes cold. "Work is admirable," she said, the word flat, "but fitting in here takes more than effort. Not everyone belongs." Her gaze swept over Celine's gown, her hair, her presence, as if weighing her against an invisible ledger. Zara's eyes flashed, her hand gripping Celine's under the table. "Celine belongs anywhere she chooses," she said, her voice sharp, but Thane waved a hand, his smile dismissive. "Zara, your generosity's noted," he said, "but some guests are decorative, not essential." The word decorative landed like a stone, implying Celine was ornamental, not substantive. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a tide of judgment. Celine's hazel eyes burned, her crimson gown glowing like a flame, her long hair a banner of defiance. She took a slow breath, her heart pounding, but her spirit unbroken, ready to face the storm brewing in this gilded arena, her light undimmed by their scorn. The Celestine Star swayed gently on the Miami waves, its main deck a glittering stage under a sky ablaze with stars. The jazz quartet's melody had softened to a sultry hum, blending with the laughter of Miami's elite as they danced, their gowns and tuxedos swirling in the warm June breeze. Fairy lights cast golden flecks across the marble floor, but the festive glow felt hollow to Celine Whitaker. Her crimson gown clung to her graceful frame, its silk catching the moonlight like a defiant flame. Her long black hair, straight as a midnight cascade with softly curled tips, swayed as she stood near the railing, her hazel eyes sharp with resolve. The Warwick family's venomous barbs, Isadora's patronizing jabs, Gideon's smirking disdain, Thane's dismissive scorn, still burned in her chest. Yet Celine, at 28, stood tall, her dark skin a proud canvas, her Atlanta roots a fire no prejudice could extinguish. She sipped sparkling water, her fingers steady despite the ache of the dinner's insults. Zara Kincaid, her mentor, had slipped away to charm a donor, leaving Celine to navigate the crowd's curious glances. The Warwick's words, calling her a decorative guest, questioning her Vine City origins, had carved a quiet wound, but her parents' sacrifices, her mother's late shifts, her father's calloused hands anchored her. She wasn't here to prove herself, not yet, but to hold her ground in a world that saw her as an outsider. The deck pulsed with life, the elite twirling to the quartet's rhythm, their laughter a polished mask over the tension Celine felt coiling beneath the surface. Then a sharp gasp sliced through the music, followed by a scream that shattered the night's elegance. "He's collapsing!" a woman cried, her voice raw with panic. Celine spun, her heels clicking on the marble, her eyes cutting through the crowd. Thane Warwick, the billionaire patriarch, staggered near the bar, his charcoal suit rumpled, his silver hair falling into his ashen face. His hand clutched his chest, his knees buckling as he rasped a broken sound, before collapsing in a heap, his body convulsing violently. Glasses shattered, chairs scraped, and the crowd surged back, their murmurs rising to a frantic hum. Isadora's shriek pierced the chaos, her emerald necklace glinting as she lurched forward, her blonde chignon unraveling. "Thane!" she wailed, her poise crumbling into ash. Gideon froze, his green eyes wide, his scotch glass trembling in his hand. "Oh my God, what's happening?" he stammered, useless in the face of crisis. Celine's heart pounded, but her instincts, honed by years at Harvard Medical School, kicked in like a switch. She dropped her glass, the sparkling water splashing across her crimson gown, and rushed to Thane's side, her hair swaying like a dark banner. Kneeling beside him, her hands steady despite the storm around her, she barked, "He's having a cardiac arrest! Call 911, now!" Her voice was a blade cutting through the din, commanding the chaos. The crowd parted, their whispers fading as her authority took hold. Her fingers found Thane's wrist, his pulse weak and erratic, a warning flare in her mind. His face was contorted, lips tinged blue, his body jerking with each convulsion. "Stay with me, Thane," she said, her tone calm but urgent, her hazel eyes locking onto his unfocused gaze, willing him to hold on. "Isadora, any aspirin here?" Celine called, her voice sharp, scanning the crowd. Isadora, trembling, her sapphire gown tangled, shook her head, her hands clutching her necklace. I don't know," she cried, her composure shattered. Gideon fumbled with his phone, dropping it in a clatter, his bravado gone. Celine turned to a server, his tray shaking, his eyes wide. "Check the staff supplies, first aid kit, low-dose aspirin, now," she ordered, her voice absolute. The server nodded, sprinting toward the galley, his footsteps a faint echo in the pandemonium. Celine's mind raced through protocols, her trauma rotations a steel core against the panic. She wasn't an ER doctor, but she'd faced emergencies in hospital wards, her hands steady through life-or-death moments. She tilted Thane's head to clear his airway, her fingers moving with surgical precision, stabilizing his position to prevent injury. The crowd pressed closer, their whispers a rising tide. "Who is she? She's doing something!" But Celine shut them out, her world narrowing to the man before her, a patient, not a billionaire who'd scorned her. The server returned, breathless, an 81-milligram aspirin tablet in his palm. "Chew it slowly," Celine instructed, guiding Thane's trembling jaw, her fingers brushing his clammy skin. "It'll thin your blood. Buy us time." She counted seconds in her head, her training a beacon in the storm. The yacht rocked gently, the fairy lights flickering, but Celine's focus was unshaken, her crimson gown stained with sweat, her hair catching the moonlight like a crown. Sirens wailed in the distance, a piercing promise of help, as Celine held the line between life and death, her light undimmed in the heart of crisis. The Celestine Star lay still, docked at Miami's glittering marina, its fairy lights casting a trembling glow across the marble deck. The jazz quartet had fallen silent, the air thick with the scent of spilled champagne and the weight of a night transformed. Celine Whitaker stood near the railing, her crimson gown creased with sweat and urgency, its silk no longer pristine, but radiant in the moonlight. Her long black hair, straight as a midnight stream with softly curled tips, caught the flickering light, a dark halo framing her radiant face. Her hazel eyes, sharp with a doctor's focus, surveyed the stunned crowd, her heart pounding not from the chaos she just mastered, but from the raw ache of the Warwick family's earlier scorn. At 28, Celine was a beacon, her dark skin a testament to her Atlanta roots, her resolve a fire forged by her parents' sacrifices. Moments ago, Thane Warwick's collapse had shattered the yacht's opulence, his cardiac arrest a lightning bolt that turned laughter to screams. Celine's swift action, her commands, her steady hands, her precise administration of aspirin, had held death at bay until the Coast Guard's sirens pierced the night. Now, as paramedics wheeled Thane toward the gangway, their red bags clattering, Celine stood tall, her breath steadying. The lead medic, a grizzled woman with steady eyes, nodded at her. "You're a doctor, aren't you? Damn good work," she said, hooking Thane to a monitor, an oxygen mask slipping over his pale face. The revelation rippled through the crowd, their whispers swelling like a tide. "A doctor? She saved him!" Phones buzzed, videos of Celine's heroism already flickering across screens, spreading like wildfire. Isadora Warwick stumbled forward, her sapphire gown askew, her blonde chignon unraveling like her composure. Her emerald necklace glinted, a cold contrast to her trembling hands. "Miss Whitaker? You're a doctor?" she stammered, her pale blue eyes once icy with disdain, now wide with shock. "You saved Thane. We were wrong. I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked, a fracture in her fortress of privilege, but the words hung heavy, laced with the weight of her earlier cruelty. Celine's gaze met hers, serene but unyielding, a warrior's calm after battle. "I did what I was trained to do," she said, her voice low, resonant, cutting through the murmurs. "Saving lives is my duty, not a favor." Her words were a shield, deflecting Isadora's apology for the sting of her barbs, calling Celine a nurse, questioning her Vine City roots, remained raw. Gideon, his black tuxedo rumpled, stepped forward, his green eyes stripped of their earlier smirk. "Celine, I was awful," he said, his voice breaking, his hands twisting nervously. "What you did, you're incredible. I'm sorry for everything." His bravado was gone, replaced by a trembling respect, his face flushed with shame. The crowd leaned in, their whispers softening, captivated by the drama unfolding. Celine's fingers brushed her gown, her heart a drumbeat of resolve. "Words hurt, Gideon," she said, her tone firm but not unkind, her hazel eyes locking onto his. "You judged me, my family, without knowing us. I saved Thane because it's who I am, not because I owe you." Her voice was a quiet thunder, stripping his remorse bare, and the deck seemed to hold its breath. The Miami skyline shimmered beyond the railing, its neon spires a silent witness to the shift in the air. Guests in their glittering gowns and tuxedos hovered, their phones capturing the moment, the story of the black woman who turned chaos into order, spreading like a spark. A man in a navy suit whispered to his companion, "She's a hero." The words rippled, a tide of respect Celine had earned in sweat and skill. Servers, once bustling, paused, their eyes darting to her with quiet reverence. Zara Kincaid, her sapphire dress catching the light, slipped to Celine's side, her smile radiant. "You showed them who you are," she whispered, squeezing Celine's hand. Celine nodded, her hair catching the fairy lights, her gown a testament to the storm she'd weathered. Isidora's lips parted, as if to speak again, but no words came. She stepped back, clutching Gideon's arm, her authority undone. Gideon's gaze dropped, his fingers knotting his tie, a flicker of shame crossing his features. The crowd's attention was a living thing, its weight pressing against Celine. But she stood unshaken, her long hair a banner of defiance, her crimson gown stained but glowing. She'd saved Thane not for their applause, but because lives mattered, because her hands were built to heal, even when her heart ached. The paramedics' footsteps faded, the stretcher's wheels a soft echo, and Celine's chest tightened with a bittersweet truth. She'd proven her worth, but the Warwick's earlier scorn, dismissing her roots, her presence, left a scar no apology could erase. The night was far from over, but Celine stood poised, her light undimmed, ready to face whatever came next in this gilded battlefield. The Miami General Hospital's sterile corridors hummed with purpose, a stark contrast to the glittering chaos of the Celestine Star 3 months prior. It was September 2025, and the fluorescent lights cast a cold glow across the linoleum, where Celine Whitaker stood outside room 412. Her white coat was crisp, a new emblem replacing the crimson gown of that fateful night, but her long black hair, straight with softly curled tips, still caught the light, a dark cascade framing her radiant face. Her hazel eyes, sharp with resolve, traced the door's metal frame, her heart a steady drumbeat. At 28, Celine was a force, her dark skin a proud canvas of her Atlanta roots, her parents' sacrifices. Her mother's late shifts as a librarian, her father's calloused hands as a mechanic. Her unyielding foundation. The Warwick family's scorn lingered like a shadow, but Celine's light burned brighter, her clinic in Liberty City a testament to her vow to heal. She'd come at Zara Kincaid's urging, her mentor insisting Thane Warwick, now recovering, deserved a chance to make amends. The memory of that June night, Thane's collapse, Isidora's venomous jabs, Gideon's smirking disdain, still stung, but Celine's actions had rewritten their narrative. She'd saved Thane not for their approval, but because it was her duty, her hands steady through the crisis that turned their prejudice to awe. Pushing the door open, the soft creak was a prelude to a reckoning. Thane lay propped on pillows, his charcoal suit replaced by a hospital gown, his silver hair limp, his eyes clouded with gratitude. "Miss Whitaker, Dr. Whitaker," he corrected, his voice weak but earnest. "You're a miracle. I failed you that night, judged you without knowing." His hand reached out, trembling, across the crisp sheets. Celine stood at the foot of the bed, her posture erect, her white coat a symbol of her truth. "I saved you because it's who I am," she said, her voice low, resonant, her hazel eyes unwavering. "Not to change your mind." Her words were a shield, guarding the heart that had endured their barbs, calling her a nurse, dismissing her Vine City roots. Thane's face softened, his eyes glistening. "My foundation can fund your trauma research," he offered, his tone sincere. "Let me make this right." Celine's fingers brushed her coat, her mind weighing his words. She accepted, not for his redemption, but for her patients, the immigrants, the uninsured, the overlooked, who'd benefit from new resources. Her goodness was a fire, burning for those she served, not for those who'd scorned her. Back at her Liberty City clinic, the air carried the scent of antiseptic and hope. The brick building, modest but alive, buzzed with patients, children clutching drawings, elders sharing stories. Celine moved through exam rooms, her white coat swaying, her hair catching the sunlight streaming through the windows. She treated a teenager's fever, stitched a worker's wound, her hands steady, her smile a balm. Her reputation had soared since the yacht, whispers of the hero doctor spreading from tenements to boardrooms. Yet the Warwick's prejudice lingered, a scar she carried but refused to let define her. One evening, as rain pattered against the clinic's windows, a letter arrived from Gideon Warwick. "I've been volunteering here," it read, detailing his work sorting supplies, scheduling outreach. "I want to learn, to do better. Can we talk?" Celine's fingers hovered over the paper, her heart a tangle of caution and curiosity. "Actions matter," she wrote back, her voice echoing in her mind, firm but open. "I'm listening. Show me. The clinic was her sanctuary, its walls adorned with thank you notes, a testament to her impact. But a new spark flickered beyond its doors. Dr. Elias Morrow, a colleague at Miami General, had noticed her work, his warm brown eyes meeting hers with respect, not bias. In a hospital cafeteria, over coffee that smelled of roasted beans, he spoke of her trauma protocols, his voice earnest. "You're changing lives, Celine," he said, his smile genuine, free of the condescension she'd faced from others. Celine's guard softened, her hazel eyes brightening. "It's about the patients," she said, her hair catching the light, a dark crown of resilience. Their conversations grew, touching on medicine, justice, and the barriers they'd both faced. Elias saw her, fully, fiercely, as a doctor, a woman, a force. The Miami skyline shimmered beyond the clinic's windows, its neon spires a canvas of possibility. Celine's chest swelled with quiet pride, her parents' sacrifices woven into every life she saved. The Warwick's scorn had been a storm, but she was the oak, rooted and rising. Gideon's letter lay on her desk, a question mark, but her path was clear. She wasn't here to absolve them, but to build, to heal, to thrive. Her white coat gleamed, her hair a banner of defiance, her heart open to a future she'd write with her own hands, her light undimmed by the shadows of that night. The Miami waterfront shimmered under a June 2026 sunset, the sky ablaze with amber and rose, waves lapping at the shore like a heartbeat. The air buzzed with the energy of a community health fair. Fairy lights strung along the pier, their glow dancing on the water. Celine Whitaker stood at the heart of it, her sapphire dress catching the breeze, its silk flowing like a quiet tide. Her long black hair, straight with softly curled tips, swayed in the ocean wind, a dark cascade framing her radiant face. At 29, her hazel eyes gleamed with a quiet joy, her dark skin a proud canvas of her Atlanta roots. Her clinic, Marshall Health, had become a beacon for Miami's underserved, its second location now open, funded by grants and grateful patients. The scars of that night on the Celestine Star, the Warwick family's prejudice, their venomous barbs, had faded, not erased, but transformed into fuel for her triumph. The pier thrummed with life, families laughing, vendors offering steaming cider, children clutching balloons. Celine's booth, adorned with her clinic's logo, drew a crowd, their voices a chorus of gratitude in Spanish, Creole, and English. She moved among them, her smile a balm, her presence commanding yet kind. Her parents' sacrifices, her mother's late shifts as a librarian, her father's calloused hands as a mechanic, were woven into every life she touched. The memory of that June 2025 night, when Thane Warwick's collapse revealed her as a doctor, lingered like a distant storm. She'd saved him not for their applause, but because her hands were built to heal, her heart rooted in purpose. Now her trauma protocols, published and praised, saved lives from Miami to Mumbai, her name a whisper in medical journals and tenements alike. Dr. Elias Morrow stood beside her, his warm brown eyes steady, his tailored blazer framing a quiet strength. Their relationship, a year strong, was a partnership forged in respect. Late nights debating treatment plans, mornings sharing coffee and dreams. Elias saw her fully, not as a symbol but as Celine, a doctor, a woman, a force. "You're glowing tonight," he said, his voice soft, his hand brushing hers, a touch that felt like home. Celine's lips curved, her heart full. "It's the city," she teased, gesturing to the skyline, its neon spires a constellation of possibility. But her joy ran deeper, rooted in her work, her roots, her choice to trust again. Elias's respect was a gift, not a necessity. She was whole, her light her own. The crowd parted as a familiar figure approached. Isadora Warwick, her blonde chignon softened by time, wore a simple cream blouse, her emerald necklace absent. Her pale blue eyes, once cold, flickered with nervous hope. "Dr. Whitaker," she said, her voice steady but raw, "I thank you for what you've done, for Thane, for this." She gestured to the fair, where Marshall Health volunteers distributed health kits. Celine nodded, her sapphire dress catching the fairy lights, her hazel eyes measuring. "I do this for the community," she said, her tone warm but firm. "Not for thanks." Isadora's lips parted, but she stepped back, her gratitude a quiet crack in her once impenetrable armor. Gideon Warwick approached next, his black suit replaced by a sweater, his green eyes bright with earnest resolve. He held a folder emblazoned with Marshall Health's logo. "Dr. Whitaker, I've been volunteering for 6 months," he said, his words rushed but sincere. "This is a proposal for a mobile health unit for rural areas. I want to keep learning, to make things right." Celine's breath caught, memories of his smirking disdain flashing through her mind. She took the folder, her fingers brushing the paper, her eyes scanning his careful notes. "This is thoughtful, Gideon," she said, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. "Actions matter. Let's talk next week." His face lit up, a spark of redemption, and Celine felt a quiet pride, not for forgiving, but for inspiring change. A local band struck up a soulful tune, its notes curling through the air, the crowd cheering. Elias squeezed Celine's hand, his voice low. "You don't just heal bodies, Celine. You heal people, even those who hurt you." His words were a mirror, reflecting her strength. She thought of her parents, their love her foundation, their sacrifices her fire. The Warwick's prejudice had been a storm, but Celine had rebuilt. Her clinic, her research, her heart. The skyline glowed, its lights a promise kept. "I'm all in, Elias," she said, her voice soft but certain, her hand tightening in his. She didn't need him to complete her, but his love, rooted in action, was a treasure she cherished. The waves lapped at the shore, a reminder that life moved forward. Celine's hair danced in the breeze, her sapphire dress a reflection of her resilience. She was Dr. Celine Whitaker, daughter, healer, warrior. Her journey from the Celestine Star's gilded scorn to this vibrant pier was a testament to her unbreakable light. The city's pulse beat around her, the future a canvas of hope, and Celine stood tall, her legacy a flame no prejudice could dim. Thank you for joining Dr. Celine Whitaker's journey, a powerful testament to resilience, compassion, and triumph over prejudice. From facing scorn on the Celestine Star to building a legacy of healing, her story reminds us that true strength shines through adversity, and worth is proven by actions, not acceptance. What moved you most? Her life-saving heroism, her defiance of bias, or her path to a love that sees her fully? Share your thoughts below, along with where you're watching from, Miami, Tokyo, or beyond, and the time there. Your support fuels our stories, so like, subscribe, and share to spread Celine's light. We're grateful for you and can't wait to meet again.